Hi everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Cioffi here. Friday, this week, this is the third snowfall in the last 6 days for me. So it certainly has been busy. You know, sometimes you actually in a lot of ways work harder for these small events than you do for the bigger ones. But this is a general 1 to 3 inch snowfall, and we'll show you on the radar here where we are with this as it's progressing to the east. This little storm is developing just east of the New Jersey coast and south of Long Island, and as a result of developing so close, it only has a limited amount of time to do what it's got to do, and that is the case here. Snow started breaking out about 2 o'clock right overhead. It wasn't like we were watching this area of precip moving up from West Virginia, North Carolina, or from western Pennsylvania. This basically just formed on top of us, and in the green areas you see here probably got bands of moderate to even occasionally heavy snow, and lighter snows as you get to the north and west in the darker blues. But that back edge is already moving its way eastward, so it's going to be offshore by about 7 or 8 o'clock Eastern time, and then done. And then we could take a little bit of a break, I think, because a break is well deserved. I'll show you on the let's go to the satellite loop, and we can see the eastern part of the U.S. All the way back to the Rockies. And here's your system here, a little bit of a subtropical feed, just kind of shooting up now as this storm organizes right there off the Cape May, off the New Jersey coast, and heading quickly to the northeast. So good news is that it didn't start developing further south and west, where we would have been snowing an extra 5 or 6 hours, in which case, instead of 1 to 3 inches of snow for most places, we'd be looking at 4, 5, 6 inches or more. And I'll just give you an idea. We'll see how the forecast verifies, but here's the Weather Service's forecast for all this. So they are going for 2 to 3 for final amounts in and around New York City and western Long Island, and 3 to 4 for my neck of the woods going east, and you can see amounts on the order of a couple of inches. This is what they were forecasting. I don't know if it snows steadily for an hour, you get into the moderate snow, you're putting down snow at about 1 inch to 1.5 inches an hour. These numbers are doable, but that back edge is racing eastward pretty quick. So we'll see if it gets there. I was more on the order of the 2 to 3 for maximum amounts on my forecast. So later on this evening we'll start to get snow totals from people, and we'll see what they come up with. And this was the forecast from the Weather Service for New Jersey for less than 1 inch in the northwest counties, which I think will verify. And then you start to get into the 1 to 2, 2 to 3 south and east of 78, and 3 to 4 south of Route 195. That may be close. I think they may come close. Now let's go to what we're going to see going forward, because I'm thinking from what I saw from the weather models today and the European and the overall upper air pattern that we're going to see things relax a little bit now. We've had 3 weather systems in 6 days. Actually, with the storm in New England that really didn't impact my area, we've had 4 systems impact the Northeast in the last week. So it's time to take a breather, and we're going to do that. If you look at we look at the teleconnection indices, and for those of you who have not seen this, I've been using this on and off for the last week or so, and what they are is they basically measure pressure changes in various parts of the northern hemisphere, and after numerous studies and research, it has come to be known that when some of these indexes are at certain levels, they create certain types of weather patterns across the United States. The first one in the upper left is the PNA index, which stands for Pacific North America Index, and that measures basically oscillations in pressure in the Northwest Pacific. When pressures there are rising in the Northwest Pacific, the PNA goes positive. When those pressures are below average, or you have low pressure there instead, then the PNA is negative. When the PNA is positive, it is a signal that well, let's say it this way. When the PNA is positive, you stand the possibility of seeing a storm in the east if other things are in play. It's not a sole indicator. There are no magic, there's no magic bullets here that you can pick out that say that one index is important. They all flash different signals, and sometimes when you combine them with several other indices going in certain directions, you can have a storm signal. One of the things I'm paying attention to is the fact that the PNA goes strongly negative next week. So that means there'll be more troughing in the west, which would probably favor temperatures to moderate here in the eastern part of the United States, which I think is going to happen. But as we go into Christmas Eve, you'll notice that it goes from being almost 3 standard deviations from neutral all the way up to the neutral line very, very rapidly. And sometimes when you get changes in indices like this that go from one extreme back to the neutral zone very quickly, that could be a spot where we would have trouble. We could have trouble here in the east. And this happened for last Saturday. We were getting a signal for December 9th and 10th, and that was about a week or two before. So we were paying attention to that. So I'm going to be paying attention to this time frame, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, right in there. And then the PNA starts to go positive after that. So that would be a favorable for some storminess in the east if other conditions are there as well. The next one I want to look at is the EPO, or the Eastern Pacific Oscillation, which is the same thing in the Eastern Pacific, and oscillations in pressure. When this index is negative, that actually means that pressures are higher than average in the Eastern Pacific, in the ocean. And when it's strong, when it is negative, it is usually in the wintertime a cold signal for the eastern part of the United States. This is actually forecast to get, to an extreme, dropping very rapidly negative, just, by the way, as the PNA is going from negative to neutral. That's another thing that leads me to be supportive of the idea of maybe something around Christmas time. The one that right now is the least important is the North Atlantic Oscillation, which is what we often refer to as the Greenland Block. And I've said this many times. I think of the 3 of these, the NAO is the one that's the most vastly overstated as far as its impact on our weather. Yeah, it does have an impact, but it is not, when this is in a negative mode, it usually in the wintertime, when this is negative, it means a cold pattern in the eastern states with the storm tracks to the south across the southern states and then the mid-Atlantic. But that not having the PNA, not having the NAO in a negative position is not an end all. We don't really need it to have wintertime weather. The EPO is, I think, the most important. The EPO combined, a negative EPO combined with the positive PNA. Okay, end of lesson. All right, there won't be a test at the end, but you'll remember it going forward when I make reference to it. So let's look at where I'm thinking this is all going. We're going to go to the GFS model here, and I'm going to put up the upper air. And we still have the same conundrum with regards to what's going to happen going forward with the upper air pattern, and particularly what's going to be happening in the west, because we still don't have this issue resolved yet with regards to the west. Now here's why the PNA is going negative, because we're having falling pressures in an area where we had a strong ridge out in the Pacific. And you see it here, right across the Pacific Northwest. We're going to have lower than average pressures in the area that's indicated in blue. The EPO goes actually positive here for a short time, and the outcome is that the flow across the United States, or at least across the eastern part of the United States, for early next week is going to be from the west. So that allows temperatures to moderate, and it also allows things to calm down. Now, as we move through next week, we do have another trough swinging around, and you can see it here. Moves through, so we get a little bit of a cold shot, not much of one for midweek, because that trough lifts out. Now, at the end of, as we go to the end of next week, this is where that P&A index starts to go from strongly neutral toward strongly negative toward the neutral zone, because now a big ridge is beginning to build into the Pacific Northwest. The issue for the weather going into the weekend of Christmas Eve and into Monday, Christmas Day, is that system that's in the southern part of this trough here in the southwest. We keep seeing models trying to figure out what's going to happen with this. And the latest run of the GFS would suggest that bottom part of that trough basically breaks off and separates, while the northern part of the trough in Canada again establishes its own entity, its own identity. That southern system just kind of gets away, cuts off near Baja California, and just sits out there and really becomes a non-issue. I don't know that I agree with that, but the northern part of the jet being strong like this would indicate colder than average weather coming back in, and then eventually that system that's off the coast of California kind of starts to open up, and you start to get energy that gets sent to the east, and it gets picked up by another trough that swings around and heads towards the east coast toward the very end of the month. But I'm more interested in that time frame around Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and I want to go to the European for this, because the European today handles things as these models always do. They never seem to want to handle things the same way together when we get into the long range. But the same evolution goes on this week, and there you see that system into the southwest. What the European does is drops it there, but then immediately kicks it to the east, so that as we move into the weekend of Christmas Eve into Christmas Day, we're already shooting energy out to the northeast. So this is going to be important, because I think it may set up some overrunning here during the next weekend and into the early part of into Christmas Day. So that's what I'm going to be watching out for. Does that thing cut off and just sit around for several days and then eventually get kicked east, or do we start to see it just kind of get pushed eastward a lot faster? This upper air would suggest that there is potential for an overrunning situation, and cold air will be getting established back into the eastern part of the U.S. to some degree. That's another thing we're going to have to measure. How much cold air do we actually get out of all of this? Once we get through this, let's call it a pattern relaxation for this week, this week coming up, I think we're going to eventually migrate back to an active pattern. So we are this particular week just passed with 4 events affecting the Northeast in 6 days. I don't think we're done. I think this winter may turn out to be, it's certainly going to already starting to look a lot different than the last 2, for sure. And here it is on the surface, how it plays out on the GFS anyway. The GFS being a bit more benign with all this. And here we go. So not much happens this week other than a couple of frontal passages. And then we head toward Christmas Eve. As we head toward the end of this week, you can see this front that comes through the second one, and it does show a little bit of overrunning, but it can't figure out, doesn't know yet, how much of that energy is going to come out of the southwest, if at all. And of course, the GFS's signature would also suggest the possibility of a significant icing event over Texas next weekend. So that's something that part of the country may want to pay attention to. Model's been doing that on and off for the last 3 or 4 days, but on this one it doesn't really show too much coming out until later on. This is the 27th of December, where the model does show an event. The European has something for next weekend looking like this, because it sends the energy out sooner. This is where the biggest difference lies. And then after that, it just looks, basically we're cold and we dry out and we wait for the next thing. So I'm kind of I'm kind of interested and somewhat motivated here by what the models are doing in the longer term. We're just going to have to deal with a little bit of a break period in the meantime. But you know what? We have a whole week to watch it, so we're certainly going to be doing that. So let me just join you guys on the chat board here, and we'll talk we'll talk some more and take some of your questions. I hope everybody's had a great day, by the way. Joshua Pan, very active pattern. I think this is the 5th time since records began in '62 that Dulles has gotten measurable snow from 2 separate systems within a 7-day period in the first half of December. Joshua, thank you for that because that's something I'm trying to find out with regards to New York City, because for here it is the 3rd snowfall in 7 days in the first half of December. So I want to know, I'm wondering if that's some kind of record or not. So I'm trying to get the answer for New York, but thank you for providing that. 1962. So I'm going to go back and look at 1962 and see what went on. All right. So let me go back. I'm just rolling back to see everybody here. So Adam Fitz, Tom Adams, Abaddon, Durakovic, Cliff Newton, Tom Adams again. Mirtha Gunter is here. You've been down in the 30s all day, up your way. Sebastian P, haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you here. And Kyle's here too. So, it's a Friday night going into the weekend before Christmas. And, I guess everybody's just kind of taking a break from the weather, which I totally understand. Sebastian P, you've got 6 inches on the ground. Total snowfall from the past week around 13. Okay, buddy, where are you? You're at 4,500 feet. That does help. But where are you? Howie Weisberg, good to see you here. No worries, Sebastian. Good to see you here. I'm just curious as to where you are. I forgot. Boone, North Carolina. Okay, great. And Michael Yanusi is here. Hi to you. 99 Wolves. The almost usual crowd. So good to see you guys here. I tell you what, this has been kind of a busy week. I'm getting a little tired, so maybe it's time for me to take a little bit of a break. I'm going to go look at that winter of '62, December of '62, to see what's going on. So we've got a measure here of the long range. For you folks hoping for a white Christmas in the Northeast and in the northern mid-Atlantic states, don't give up. I think we have a shot. We're going to have to just see how the models play out as we move through the weekend and through next week. But I'm moderately encouraged by the way the models are behaving. Certainly, we're not going to go into any kind of super warm-up. That's for sure. I don't see it in the cards. And by the way, for this weekend, at least for me, there are 2 weak systems coming through. One for Saturday evening that might produce a couple of stray snow showers, and one later Sunday night into Monday morning as we transition over into milder air. We might have a brief period of a wintry mix of precipitation during the overnight Sunday night into Monday morning. But overall, the weekend looks okay with reasonably calm weather. Just waiting for the last of these snows to end, which they will shortly. So I'm going to leave it here, folks. Again, I hope everybody has a great weekend. Earl Warren, yes, I'm on Hudson Valley tonight on FiOS 1 News Hudson Valley. I'm glad you're watching. Thank you. Adam Barrios, the odds of a white Christmas, and specifically north of Houston, are pretty low, almost zero, unless you get some weird thing to happen with the cold air wedging southward. You're going to need that upper low to really just kind of sit there, and for the trough in the north to feed down some cold air, much like what happened last week. But I think that's a long shot at this point. That trough is going to be more troughing toward the east rather than where you are, at least from what I'm seeing right now. And James NASCAR fan, thank you for being here. Joyce Mack just jumped on. That I'm not out catching bass off the beach. It's too cold, Joyce. When it gets this cold, I'm not doing it. It's just not for me. Thanks, Steve G, for the kind words. Mirtha, good as always. Good to see you here. And let's see. I think I got everybody tonight, so everybody got a mention. When when the crowd is light, I can do it. You had 4.5 inches. Wow, that's incredible. Well, you know, the models are hinting at an icing event for Texas. I don't know if it's going to make it that far south for you. It might be more west and north of you, but why don't we wait and see what the models do in the coming days? You know, I'm thinking it's going to be more north and west of you, maybe from Dallas and Waco and those areas on westward. But you know what? Things can certainly change. And we saw what happened with this. We're having snow here tonight, where models just basically changed at the last minute, and we're just sitting around playing catch up. All right, folks, I'm going to end it here at this point. Website over the weekend, you can check that out. Meteorologistjoecioffi.com. If you haven't and you need to get somebody or the weather geek in your particular life, I'll put the link up here. You might want to do a little shopping at the my Joe Stradamus store. I've got mugs and phone cases and a few things there. So if you'd like, go ahead and take a look. And there's also you link to my Facebook page. I'll probably do a Facebook live stream tonight after 9 o'clock. The links are on my YouTube channel page. If you look on the banner at the top of the page, there's a link to Google+, to Facebook, to Twitter, and to my website. So it's very, very easy to go from here to there. Okay? Have a great Friday and a good weekend. If I don't see you over the weekend, we'll talk to you then.